Former Formula 1 race director Michael Masi was demoted after the 2021 season final in Abu Dhabi. Subsequently, he quit working for the FIA after receiving death threats from angry TeamLH cult members. In the British-dominated F1 media, he also had little to no support, as they would have rather seen Lewis Hamilton win that race. Now, after almost 5 years, a colleague has come out with support for Masi and the decision the Australian made. Let's look at what he said and whether we agree with it or not. I'm Wimbo. Here's 3 seconds to leave a like. Quickly, for the people who have started watching F1 after 2021, let's recap what happened in the final race in 21. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton arrived in Abu Dhabi equal on points after a wild season, with plenty of thrilling moments. The final race at the Yas Marina circuit was actually a little underwhelming. There was a bad start for Verstappen, an attempt to overtake again, and then Hamilton cut in the track, but other than that, not much happened. Mercedes were keen the whole race to keep Hamilton in front of Verstappen, as they figured track position would keep them out of a risky fight, and that cost them in the end. When Canadian fan favourite Nicholas Latifi crashed his Williams car 5 laps before the finish, Michael Masi set everything in motion to get the race restarted, rather than finishing under neutralised conditions. Hamilton and Mercedes cherished track position, while Verstappen was called in for fresh soft tyres by Red Bull. Masi then allowed the lapped cars between Verstappen and Hamilton to unlap themselves, but the few behind Verstappen were left where they were. The safety car usually does an extra lap before releasing the drivers, but Masi called them in straight away to allow for one last lap of racing. Verstappen passed Hamilton in turn 5 and won the title. Mercedes protested the result, but the stewards saw no reason to change the result, and Mercedes didn't pursue any legal action either. This result caused a big uproar, and Masi was blamed for Hamilton losing the opportunity to win a record-breaking A title. He and Latifi received death threats, which made the Australian return to Australia to be a race director in supercars. That, in a nutshell, is what happened. Now, let's see what this race director I mentioned earlier said about it. Michael Masi was replaced by 2 rotating race directors. I think they did this so that the negativity that a person in such a position gets was divided, instead of being focused on one individual. Those 2 race directors were Niels Wittich and Eduardo Freitas. The German Niels Wittich is the one who spoke up about the way Michael Masi was treated after Abu Dhabi 21. He spoke with German magazine Formel 1 about the events that took place, and he was very open about how he felt about it. From my point of view, Michael didn't do that much wrong. The regulations didn't strictly define everything. What he did was within his authority. He had a certain level of discretion in how to deploy the safety car. One key factor was that teams, FIA and Formula 1 had all agreed over many meetings that races should, if possible, finish under green flag conditions. Nobody wanted a race ending behind the safety car. In Abu Dhabi, the situation was such that any intervention would have disadvantaged someone. You could have red flagged the race, but that requires specific conditions like danger to personnel or blocked track. That wasn't the case, so red flag wasn't really an option. Okay, and this is interesting, as I've heard the red flag option mentioned a lot, also by known F1 pundits. But Wittich also spoke about how the race director faced a question about lapped cars. That at first, they couldn't unlap themselves, but then he allowed it, without making them wait the usual extra lap. He said that this was allowed under the rules at the time. So he basically did what everyone already agreed on, set up one final racing lap. Wittich said that the result was an exciting finish with an overtake, a winner and a runner-up. It could easily have ended up differently, but that's just how racing is. He pointed out that a late safety car is always controversial, that fans dislike it when it affects the final result. But this happens in every race. Whether early or late, someone always gains, someone always loses. It's simply part of the sport, according to the former race director. He's making a lot of sense here, but I'll go into the details more later on in this video. A championship isn't decided in one race alone. Points lost earlier in the season matter just as much. Both Hamilton and Verstappen had chances to secure the title earlier. That's a quote that hits home as well. He said this before talking about how he experienced the treatment of his former colleague Masi in the aftermath of 8021. After the investigation following Abu Dhabi, the conclusion seemed to be that Michael had to go, essentially finding a scapegoat. What was really disappointing for me and many colleagues was the lack of support from the FIA for Michael. That's something that needs to be clearly criticised. Everyone knew that in extreme situations, you'd be left on your own. In the past, under Charlie Whiting, there was always backing from FIA leadership. Max Mosley stood firmly behind him. That support wasn't there anymore. It still isn't. That's one of the reasons I'm no longer a race director in Formula 1. Whatever happened, there was no proper discussion. No backing for employees. And that's the worst takeaway from that whole situation. As you can tell, Wittich felt that as a race director in current F1, you aren't protected by the FIA or the president. There was a powerful faction inside the sport that wasn't happy with the outcome, and they scapegoated Masi. I think this is very interesting stuff, and enough reason to talk about 8021 again. There are a few things he said that I want to address here. I agree with Wittich that Masi was made a scapegoat to please the all-powerful Toto Wolff and Mercedes. They won the constructors, which is the most valuable from a team's point of view. But Masi had not followed up on the orders that Wolff barked at him, and instead listened to the reasonable input of the legend that is Jonathan Wheatley. The FIA had to give Wolff something, and as he was out for revenge, the demotion of Masi was a way to give him that. See, a lot of Brits go on about how Masi didn't have the authority to do what he did, but according to Niels Wittich, he did. Article 15.3 of the F1 sporting regulations grants the race director overriding authority over the clerk of the course regarding specific matters, notably deployment and withdrawal of the safety car. That's clear as day. This article hasn't been changed or specified. It's still not clear when a race director can use this. In Abu Dhabi, he used it to not have the race finish in yellow flag conditions. But instead, he did what the teams had agreed on, which is to finish on the green conditions. This goes for every race, but especially this race as it was a title decider. You could argue that this shouldn't matter. But let's not forget that Autosport wrote an open letter to Max to not let the fight end with a crash. That's how important the race was. Well, the race finished most spectacularly, but they didn't like the outcome. I pointed this out to them on Twitter around that time, and they blocked me. What stands out to me is that if they had let the race fizzle out under yellow conditions, the sport would have taken a hit, and the FIA would have been criticised for failing to get the race going on time. In the scenario that played out, we got a lap of racing, we saw an overtake, which according to the new F1 rules is very important, and we had a winner and a runner-up. If Verstappen hadn't dared to take that lunge in turn 5, he wouldn't have won. If Hamilton had defended as Perez did to him on all tyres at the start of the race, then Hamilton would have won. It's as simple as that. Mercedes and their strategy team also need to take accountability for being so scared of a fight in a way faster car that they insisted on track position throughout the whole race. They could have pitted Lewis during the race on plenty of occasions. Verstappen ended up with 2 pit stops more than Hamilton. Wittich also made a great point about how a championship is won over a whole season. Verstappen got taken out in Hungary and Silverstone by Mercedes drivers, and Hamilton pressed the magic button in Baku and was the only car to start on Inters in Hungary, costing him a lot of points. I'm glad to see someone from deep inside the FIA having the guts to confirm what we as Verstappen fans and millions of neutral fans already knew. Masi did what was agreed on within the means he had at his disposal. The FIA did investigate the whole ordeal and concluded that there was an element of human error in the procedure. TeamLH and the biased media we all know so well saw this as a big win and an opportunity to dismiss Max's first championship. But here's what I have to say about that. In the first race of the season, race control didn't notice that 2 Mercedes cars were going off track and gaining an advantage 29 times. They only found out when Verstappen was told to do the same. I'd say that was a human error from the race control side, as F1's Article 33.3 dictates that drivers must use the track at all times within the white lines marking the edge. Leaving the track without a justifiable reason is forbidden. All 4 wheels over the white line constitutes of a breach, often resulting in deleted lap times or penalties if a lasting advantage is gained. If the result of Abu Dhabi 21 doesn't count because of a human error, neither does Bahrain 21. We can look at every single race, every decision in F1 and find ways to dismiss the result. Drivers are humans, they make mistakes. And race control is run by humans as well. They also make mistakes. The result always counts. Fight me in the comments if you dare. Then the heartfelt part about how as a race director you're not protected by the FIA. Wittich said that this is the reason why he left in 24. He said that Max Mosley, with all his shortcomings, protected Charlie Whiting at all time with everything he had. Something Jean Todt didn't do. And then there was Mohammed Ben Sulayem, who was usually too busy to protect himself from scandals. I think we haven't had any major issues with race directors in the past few years in F1, but then again, we also haven't had seasons as loaded as 21 was. The odd situation with Norris overtaking off track was quickly forgotten about, which was fine by me. What are your thoughts on the matter? Let me know in the comments. And please subscribe if you got value from this video. Take care now. Doei doei.